The baby monitor crackled to life at 2:17 a.m., and that's when my world imploded. I just walked through the door after a brutal 12-hour EMT shift, still smelling like antiseptic and other people's emergencies. My wife Dana was supposedly asleep upstairs with our 6-month-old son Tyler, but her voice drifted down through the kitchen speaker, crystal clear and venomous. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Mom, I'm telling you, it's foolproof. Once I establish the pattern of him being absent, working all these crazy hours, I'll file for divorce and take him for everything. Dana's voice carried that smug satisfaction I'd been hearing more often lately. Child support, alimony, the house. Austin says the courts always side with mothers, especially when the father's never around. Austin Reed, that smug bastard who used to work at Dana's dental office before she quit 6 months ago. The same Austin who'd been texting her at all hours, supposedly about old work friends. But honey, what if Caleb fights it? That was Dana's mother, Margaret, her voice carrying through what must have been a phone call. Dana laughed, cold and calculating. Fight it with what? He's barely scraping by as an EMT. I've already talked to 3 lawyers. Austin knows a guy who specializes in maximizing settlements. Caleb's so wrapped up in playing hero, saving strangers, he has no idea what's coming. By Christmas, I'll have the house, full custody, and enough monthly support to live comfortably. Austin and I can finally be together without sneaking around. I stood frozen in my own kitchen, still holding my work bag, listening to my wife of 5 years casually plan my destruction. The baby monitor, the expensive one Dana had insisted we needed for safety, had become the instrument of my enlightenment. What about Tyler? Margaret's voice carried a note of concern. Tyler will be fine. Better, actually. Austin makes 3 times what Caleb does selling cars, and he's already talking about being a real father figure. Not like Caleb, who's never home anyway. The conversation continued for another 10 minutes, each word driving deeper into my chest like a rusty knife. They discussed lawyers, timelines, and strategies for making me look like an unfit father. Dana even mentioned how she'd been documenting my absence from family events. Events she'd specifically told me not to worry about because work was more important. When the call finally ended, I carefully set down my bag and walked to our home office. My hands shook as I opened the laptop and checked our joint bank account. In the past 3 months, Dana had been making cash withdrawals, small amounts but frequent, probably building a war chest. But Dana had made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated me. See, being an EMT doesn't just teach you how to save lives. It teaches you to think fast under pressure, to notice details others miss, and to document everything because lives depend on accurate records. Most importantly, it teaches you that when someone shows you who they really are, you better believe them. I spent the next 2 hours methodically going through our finances, Dana's social media accounts, and her phone records. The picture that emerged made me sick. Text messages with Austin going back 8 months, including photos I won't describe and plans for their future that involved my complete financial ruin. But here's what Dana didn't know about her absent husband. I'd been taking night classes in business administration for 2 years, planning to eventually transition from EMT work to hospital administration. Part of that education included a thorough understanding of family law, asset protection, and documentation requirements. By sunrise, I had a plan. The next morning, I played the perfect unsuspecting husband, made coffee, asked Dana how she slept, kissed Tyler goodbye before my shift. Dana barely looked up from her phone, probably texting Austin about their conversation with her mother. Working late again tonight? She asked, not even trying to hide the hope in her voice. Probably. Jenkins called in sick, so I'm covering a double. This was true, but I'd also arranged to meet with Miriam Keller, a family law attorney my EMT partner Rick had recommended after his own messy divorce. That's fine. Mom's coming over for dinner anyway. Of course she was, probably to plan Phase 2 of Operation Destroy Caleb. Miriam Keller's office was in a converted Victorian house downtown, the kind of place that screamed competence without the pretentious marble and mahogany of the bigger firms. She was a woman in her early 40s with steel gray hair and the kind of direct gaze that suggested she'd seen every variety of human duplicity. Mr. Foster, Rick tells me you're in a difficult situation. Before we begin, I need you to understand that everything we discuss is confidential, but I can only help you within the bounds of the law. I understand. I need to protect myself and my son from what's coming. I played her the audio recording I'd made of the baby monitor conversation. Miriam listened without expression, occasionally taking notes. When it finished, she leaned back in her chair. Well, that's certainly illuminating. Your wife and her accomplice have essentially outlined their strategy for defrauding you. The good news is that forewarned is forearmed. The bad news is that some of what she said isn't wrong. The system does tend to favor mothers in custody disputes, and if you're genuinely absent due to work, that can be used against you. So what do I do? First, we document everything. Second, we protect your assets legally. Third, we build a case that shows you're not just a paycheck, but an involved father. And fourth, she smiled grimly, we let them think they're winning until it's too late for them to change course. Over the next hour, Miriam outlined a strategy that was both legally sound and personally satisfying. The key was patience and meticulous documentation. Dana wanted to paint me as an absent father? Fine. But every interaction, every conversation, every decision would be recorded and documented. There's something else, I said. I think my wife's affair partner might be running some kind of scam. She mentioned he knows lawyers who specialize in maximizing settlements. That sounds like he's done this before. Miriam's eyebrows rose. Austin Reed, you said? Let me make some calls. If he's been coaching multiple women through strategic divorces, that's a pattern we can expose. I left Miriam's office feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not just hope, but a sense of purpose. Dana and Austin thought they were playing chess while I was playing checkers. They had no idea I was about to flip the entire board. That evening, I came home to find Dana and Margaret huddled over Dana's laptop at the kitchen table. They quickly closed it when I walked in, but not before I caught a glimpse of what looked like real estate listings. House hunting already? I asked casually, opening a beer. Just browsing, Dana said, not meeting my eyes. You know how I like to look at the nice places. The places we can't afford, you mean? Margaret sniffed. Maybe if you had more ambition than driving an ambulance around, Dana could have nice things. I took a long sip of my beer, letting the insult hang in the air. 6 months ago, I would have defended myself, pointed out that EMTs provide a vital service, that I was working towards something better. Now I just smiled. You're probably right, Margaret. I should definitely aim higher. Dana looked surprised by my agreement. She'd been expecting a fight, probably hoping to document my aggressive behavior for her lawyers. Well, I'm glad you're finally seeing sense, Margaret continued. Dana deserves better than this. She gestured around our modest but comfortable home. She certainly deserves what she's earned, I agreed, pulling out my phone. Speaking of which, I should probably work some overtime this weekend. Build up our savings. I spent the rest of the evening playing the perfect husband, asking Dana about her day, helping with Tyler, even suggesting we plan a date night soon. Dana seemed confused by my attentiveness, but Margaret looked suspicious. After they went to bed, I spent 3 hours documenting everything, photographing the real estate listings Dana had been viewing, she'd left the laptop open, copying text messages, and researching Austin Reed's background. What I found was fascinating. Austin had been married twice before, both marriages ending in expensive divorces. His ex-wives had received substantial settlements, but both had ended up in financial trouble within a few years. One had even filed for bankruptcy. A pattern was definitely emerging, and 2 weeks into my investigation, I'd established a routine that would have made any detective proud. Every conversation was recorded, legally since it was in my own home, every financial transaction documented, every interaction with Tyler photographed and time-stamped. Dana, meanwhile, had grown bolder. She was barely bothering to hide her affair anymore, coming home late from errands that took 3 hours, receiving flowers from a grateful patient. She'd quit her dental hygienist job months ago, and spending money we supposedly didn't have on new clothes and salon treatments. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening when I arrived home early from a shift that had ended sooner than expected. Dana's car was in the driveway, but she wasn't answering her phone. I could hear music coming from our bedroom. I climbed the stairs quietly, my EMT training making me naturally stealthy in emergency situations. The bedroom door was cracked open, and what I saw through the gap made my stomach turn. Dana was on a video call with Austin, both of them partially undressed, engaged in activities I won't describe in detail. But what made it worse was that Tyler was napping in his crib not 10 feet away. God, I can't wait until we don't have to sneak around anymore, Dana was saying to the laptop screen. Just a few more weeks and Caleb will be served. Then we can be together properly. Are you sure your lawyer thinks Christmas is the right timing? Austin's voice came through the laptop speakers. Perfect timing. Right after the holidays, when he spent money on presents and feeling generous. Plus, it'll look like I tried to make the marriage work through one last Christmas. Very sympathetic to a judge. I backed away from the door, my hands shaking with rage. Not just because of the betrayal, but because they were conducting their affair with my infant son in the room. That crossed a line from personal betrayal into child endangerment. But instead of confronting them, I did something better. I went downstairs, retrieved the small digital camera I kept in my work bag for documenting accident scenes, and returned to record evidence. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years and spent the day with Miriam, reviewing everything I'd gathered. "This is actually better than I hoped," she said, reviewing the photographs and recordings. "Your wife has made several critical errors. First, conducting an affair in the same room as your infant son gives us grounds to question her judgment as a parent. Second, her statements about timing the divorce for maximum financial impact show premeditation and bad faith. Third, the fact that she's already consulting lawyers while pretending to work on the marriage constitutes fraud. What's our next move? We let her file first, let her commit to her strategy and her lawyer. Meanwhile, we file a motion for emergency custody based on the evidence of her conducting inappropriate video calls in your son's presence. The judge won't like that at all." "And Austin?" Miriam smiled grimly. "I did some digging. Austin Reed has been involved in 4 suspicious divorce cases over the past 6 years. 3 different women, all of whom received large settlements and then ended up in relationships with Austin afterward. 2 of those women lost their houses within 3 years and are now in significant debt. I think Mr. Reed has been running a long-term con, romancing married women, coaching them through expensive divorces, then bleeding them dry." "Can we prove that?" "We're going to try. I've reached out to his ex-wife, the first one before he started his current pattern. She's agreed to meet with us. Apparently Austin left her with significant debt and a ruined credit score. The meeting with Austin's first ex-wife, Jennifer, was scheduled for the following Saturday at a coffee shop across town. Jennifer was a tired-looking woman in her early 30s, with the hollow-eyed appearance of someone who'd been through a financial and emotional wringer. "Austin is a predator," she said without preamble. "He targets women who are unhappy in their marriages, usually women with assets or husbands who have steady incomes. He seduces them, convinces them they deserve better, then coaches them through divorces designed to maximize the settlement." "Then what happens?" I asked. "Then he moves in, takes control of their finances, and bleeds them dry. Credit cards, loans, investment schemes that never pan out. By the time they realize what's happening, he's moved on to the next mark and they're left with nothing." Jennifer pulled out a folder thick with documents. "I've been tracking him for 3 years, trying to build a case. The problem is that most of his victims are too ashamed to come forward. They don't want to admit they were conned." "What about the other women? The ones from the recent divorces?" "Sarah Martinez lost her house last year. She's living with her sister now, working 2 jobs to pay off the debt Austin left her with. Lisa Chen is in bankruptcy proceedings. Austin convinced her to invest her divorce settlement in some cryptocurrency scheme that turned out to be worthless." Miriam leaned forward. "Would they be willing to testify?" "If it means stopping him from doing it to someone else? Yes, we've been waiting for the right opportunity." As we left the coffee shop, I felt a cold satisfaction settling in my chest. Dana thought she was playing me for a fool, but she was actually the mark in a much larger con game, and now I had the evidence to prove it. 3 weeks before Christmas, Dana finally made her move. I came home from work to find her sitting at the kitchen table with a man in an expensive suit who introduced himself as her attorney, David Walsh. "Caleb, we need to talk," Dana said, not meeting my eyes. Tyler was nowhere to be seen, probably at Margaret's house for this ambush. "Sure thing. Let me just grab a beer. Anyone else want one?" I kept my voice casual, even friendly. Walsh declined with a tight smile. "Mr. Foster, I represent your wife in a dissolution of marriage action. These are divorce papers, along with temporary orders for child support and spousal maintenance." He slid a thick envelope across the table. I opened it slowly, pretending to read documents I'd already seen thanks to Miriam's connections in the legal community. "Wow," I said after a few minutes. "This is pretty comprehensive. You're asking for the house, primary custody of Tyler, and—" I did some quick math. "About 70% of my income in combined support payments. The amounts are calculated based on state guidelines," Walsh said smoothly. "Your wife has been the primary caregiver for your son while you've been largely absent due to your work schedule." "Largely absent," I repeated thoughtfully. "That's an interesting way to put it. I mean, I have been working a lot of overtime lately, building up our savings for Tyler's future." Dana finally looked at me, probably surprised I wasn't yelling or arguing. "Caleb, this doesn't have to be ugly. We just want what's fair." "Fair," I nodded. "I can respect that. When do I need to respond to this?" "You have 30 days, Walsh said, but I'd recommend you retain counsel sooner rather than later. These temporary orders go into effect immediately, which means you'll need to find alternative housing and begin making support payments within 2 weeks. Alternative housing. Right. I took another sip of beer. I guess I should start looking for an apartment. They'd expected anger, threats, maybe even violence. My calm acceptance clearly unsettled them. There's one more thing, Dana said, pulling out her phone. I think it's better if Tyler stays with my mother during the transition, until things are settled. And there it was, the final play. Separate me from my son immediately, establish a pattern of Dana being the primary parent, then use that pattern to justify permanent custody. That makes sense, I agreed. This is probably confusing for him. Walsh looked almost disappointed by my cooperation. He'd probably been hoping for drama he could use against me in court. After they left, I called Miriam. They filed today, I told her, just like you predicted. Perfect. That means we can file our counter-motion tomorrow. Are you ready for this to get ugly? I've been ready for weeks. The next morning, while Dana was out running errands, probably celebrating with Austin, a process server arrived at our house with papers for her. Not just divorce counterclaims, but emergency motions for custody based on her inappropriate conduct, along with a motion to freeze all marital assets pending investigation of dissipation. I wasn't there when Dana was served, but Margaret called me at work, screaming about underhanded tactics and dirty tricks. Apparently, Dana had been so shocked she'd dropped her coffee and stained her new dress. You have no idea what you're dealing with, Margaret shrieked into the phone. Dana has evidence of your neglect, your absence, your failure as a husband and father. I'm sure she does, I said calmly. See you in court, Margaret. That evening, Dana came home in a fury unlike anything I'd ever seen from her. What the hell is this? She waved the legal papers in my face. Emergency custody hearing? Asset freeze? Your lawyer is claiming I'm an unfit mother. Are you? I asked simply. What kind of question is that? Of course I'm not. I've been taking care of Tyler while you've been playing hero in your ambulance. Playing hero, I repeated. Is that what you call it? You know what I mean. You're never here, Caleb. You work constantly. You're always tired. When you're home, you barely spend time with your own son. You're right, I said, setting down my beer. I have been working a lot. 60, sometimes 70 hours a week. Do you know why? Dana blinked, thrown off by my agreement. Because you kept saying we needed more money. The house was too small, Tyler needed better everything. You wanted to quit your job to be a stay-at-home mom. So I worked overtime to give you what you said you wanted. That's not... And while I was working all those extra hours, you were planning to leave me. Not just leave me, but destroy me financially and take my son away. I pulled out my phone and opened the recording app. Would you like to hear the conversation you had with your mother 3 weeks ago? The one about taking me for everything and making sure I look like an unfit father? Dana's face went white. You recorded me? I recorded a conversation that took place in my own home, transmitted over a baby monitor that we both paid for. Completely legal. You bastard, she whispered. Actually, I'm the legitimate child of 2 married parents, unlike Tyler, who's going to grow up knowing his mother chose to destroy his family for money. Dana slapped me. Hard. The crack echoed through the kitchen. I didn't react, didn't raise my hand, didn't even step back. I just looked at her with calm disappointment while my cheek burned. Feel better? I asked. She slapped me again, tears streaming down her face. How many times do you want to hit me, Dana? Because I should mention that I'm recording this conversation too, and assault is still assault, even between spouses. She stepped back, horrified by her own actions. The custody hearing is Monday, I said quietly. I suggest you spend the weekend thinking about whether you want to fight for Tyler or whether you want to keep playing house with Austin Reed. How do you know about Austin? I know a lot of things, Dana. I know about his previous marriages, his pattern of targeting unhappy wives, his specialty in coaching women through expensive divorces. I know about the other women he's done this to, and what happened to them afterward. Dana sank into a kitchen chair, her face pale and shocked. I also know that you've been conducting your affair in Tyler's bedroom while he naps 10 feet away. That's going to be very interesting to explain to a family court judge. Caleb, please... Please what? Please pretend I don't know what you've been planning? Please let you take my son and my house and most of my income so you can play happy family with a con artist? I finished my beer and set the empty bottle on the counter. Here's what's going to happen, Dana. On Monday, we're going to court. You're going to try to convince a judge that you deserve custody and support. I'm going to present evidence that you've been planning this divorce for months, conducting an affair in our son's presence, and working with a man who's run the same scam on at least 3 other women. It's not a scam, Dana said weakly. Really? When Austin moves in here after the divorce, are you going to let him handle your finances, invest your alimony and child support payments? Maybe he's got some great opportunities he wants to share with you. Dana's expression told me I'd hit the target. Yeah, that's what I thought. You're not the predator in this situation, Dana. You're the prey. Austin's been grooming you for months, and you fell for it completely. I started toward the stairs, then turned back. By the way, I've moved out of our bedroom. I'll be sleeping in the guest room until this is resolved. And Dana? Don't even think about taking Tyler out of state. I've already filed a motion to prevent that, and if you violate it, you'll be in contempt of court. As I climbed the stairs, I could hear Dana crying at the kitchen table. Part of me felt sorry for her. She really had been manipulated by Austin. But she'd also chosen to betray our marriage and try to destroy me financially. Some choices have consequences. The emergency custody hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a gray Monday morning in December. I arrived at the courthouse with Miriam, dressed in my best suit and carrying a briefcase full of evidence. Dana arrived with Walsh and Margaret, looking pale and nervous. Judge Patricia Morrison was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, with a reputation for cutting through drama and focusing on facts. She'd been on the family court bench for 15 years and had seen every variety of custody dispute. This is an emergency hearing regarding temporary custody of Tyler Foster, age 6 months, Judge Morrison began. Mr. Walsh, your client filed for divorce and requested primary custody. Mr. Foster has filed a counter-motion claiming Mrs. Foster is unfit. This is highly unusual for a case involving an infant with no history of abuse or neglect allegations. Counselor Keller, you requested this emergency hearing. Please explain why. Miriam stood and activated the courtroom's audio system. Your Honor, I'd like to play a recording that demonstrates Mrs. Foster's true motivations in this divorce action. For the next 10 minutes, the courtroom listened to Dana's conversation with her mother, including her plans to take Caleb for everything, and her admission that she'd been documenting my absence from family events as evidence of unfitness. Judge Morrison's expression grew colder with each revelation. Mrs. Foster, she said when the recording ended, did you make these statements? Dana looked at Walsh, who nodded reluctantly. Yes, Your Honor, but they were taken out of context. What context would make planning to defraud your husband acceptable, Mrs. Foster? I was just frustrated. Caleb works all the time, and I felt like a single mother. Mr. Foster, Judge Morrison turned to me. How many hours per week do you typically work? Between 50 and 60 hours, Your Honor. I'm an EMT with the city, and I've been working overtime to build our savings for Tyler's future. And why weren't you attending the family events Mrs. Foster referenced? She told me not to, Your Honor. She said work was more important and that she could handle things like doctor's appointments and family gatherings on her own. Judge Morrison made a note. Counselor Keller, you mentioned additional evidence? Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Foster has been conducting an extramarital affair with Austin Reed, a man who has a documented pattern of targeting married women, coaching them through expensive divorces, and then financially exploiting them. Miriam presented evidence of Austin's previous relationships and their outcomes, along with testimony from his victims. The judge listened with growing disgust. Furthermore, Miriam continued, Mrs. Foster has been conducting this affair in the marital home, specifically in the bedroom where Tyler sleeps. We have video evidence of Mrs. Foster engaged in inappropriate video calls with Mr. Reed while Tyler was napping in his crib. Video evidence? Judge Morrison's voice was sharp. Mr. Foster documented this behavior when he came home early from work and discovered it. The video clearly shows the baby's crib in the background during Mrs. Foster's inappropriate conduct. Walsh objected strenuously, but the judge overruled him and reviewed the evidence. Her expression grew increasingly severe. Mrs. Foster, do you understand that conducting adult activities in your infant son's bedroom represents profoundly poor judgment? Dana was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. I didn't think... Tyler was sleeping. That's exactly the problem, Mrs. Foster. You didn't think. You put your own gratification above your child's well-being and your family's stability. The judge reviewed more evidence. Dana's financial records showing cash withdrawals to fund her affair, text messages discussing her plans to bleed Caleb dry, and documentation of her lies about where she was spending her time. Mr. Walsh, Judge Morrison said finally, your client has demonstrated a pattern of deception, financial manipulation, and poor judgment regarding child welfare. I'm granting Mr. Foster's motion for temporary primary custody. Dana gasped, and Margaret stood up shouting about injustice until the bailiff threatened to remove her. Furthermore, the judge continued, I'm ordering a full investigation into Mr. Reed's activities. If he's been systematically defrauding divorce settlements, that's a matter for criminal prosecution. Your Honor, Walsh tried one last time, Mrs. Foster has been the primary caregiver. Mrs. Foster has been planning to destroy her family for financial gain while conducting an affair in her infant son's presence. That's not caregiving, counselor. That's child endangerment. The temporary orders were devastating for Dana. I received primary custody of Tyler. She was granted supervised visitation only, and instead of receiving alimony and child support, she was ordered to pay me child support based on her earning potential as a dental hygienist. As we left the courthouse, Dana tried to approach me. "Caleb, please, we need to talk. Talk to your lawyer," I said simply. "And Dana? You might want to ask Austin where he's planning to be when your alimony payments start coming in, because based on his pattern, I'd guess he's already looking for his next mark." That evening, I got a call from Miriam with interesting news. "Austin Reed was arrested this afternoon," she said. "Turns out the DA's office has been building a case against him for months, and our evidence was the final piece they needed. He's being charged with multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy." "What about Dana?" "She's not being charged criminally, but Austin's arrest has some interesting implications. Apparently, he's been promising her that they'd move to Florida together after the divorce was final. He even had her put down deposits on apartments and cars using money from your joint account." "Let me guess, the apartments don't exist and the car deposits went straight into Austin's pocket?" "Exactly. Your wife isn't just a betrayer, Caleb. She's a victim too. Austin's been playing her from the beginning." I should have felt sorry for Dana. In a way, I did. But she'd still chosen to betray our marriage and try to destroy me financially. Being conned didn't excuse her actions. The final divorce hearing was scheduled for February, but it was essentially a formality. Dana's credibility was destroyed, Austin was facing prison time, and the evidence of her poor judgment was overwhelming. On a cold Thursday morning, Judge Morrison signed the final decree. I received primary custody of Tyler, our house, and most of our assets. Dana received minimal visitation rights and was ordered to pay child support. As we left the courthouse for the last time, Dana approached me one final time. "Caleb, I know I can't undo what I did, but I want you to know I really did love you once." I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. She looked older, worn down by the stress and humiliation of the past few months. Austin's arrest had hit her hard, and she was facing the reality that she'd destroyed her family for a lie. "I know you did," I said quietly. "But love isn't just a feeling, Dana. It's a choice you make every day, and when it mattered most, you chose money over family. What am I supposed to do now? Figure out how to be the mother Tyler deserves. That's the only thing that matters anymore." I walked away, carrying Tyler in his car seat, leaving Dana standing alone on the courthouse steps. 6 months later, I heard through mutual friends that Dana had moved back in with her mother and was working at a dental office across town. Austin had been sentenced to 5 years in prison for fraud. His other victims had come forward, and the case had made national news as an example of divorce romance scams. Tyler and I settled into a routine. I reduced my overtime hours and hired a nanny for the times when I had to work. Tyler was thriving, happy, and healthy, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about his well-being. Dana saw him every other weekend under court supervision. She was trying to rebuild her relationship with him, and I didn't interfere with that. Whatever else she'd done, Tyler deserved to know his mother. As for me, I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic or explosive. Sometimes it's simply refusing to be destroyed by someone else's choices, protecting what matters most, and building a better life from the wreckage. The baby monitor that had revealed Dana's betrayal was still plugged in Tyler's room, but now it only carried the sounds of peaceful sleep and my son's happy babbling when he woke up each morning. Some endings aren't about getting even, they're about getting free.